All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have the absolute pleasure of being joined right now by the host of the Sitting Ringside podcast. He is the former WCW ring announcer, and you can currently catch him every Tuesday night on Impact Wrestling. Dave Penzer is here with Botchamania already. Dave, how you doing, my friend?
I'm good, man. Happy to be here. My pleasure. Wish I had Dave Meltzer's money, though.
No kidding, eh? Well, you got the 5-star ring announcing as far as I'm concerned.
Thank you.
So there's so much to talk about with you, Dave. You've got such a great career here. Let's just start right at the beginning. How did you get involved in this crazy business?
The story's been told a lot of times, so I'll tell a short version. Grew up a fan, championship wrestling from Florida, watching Dusty Rhodes, Superstar Billy Graham, The Assassin, and just wanted to get involved, didn't know how to get involved. My dad is a psychologist, and he ran a center for counseling that had a bunch of other psychologists that work with him. And there was a promotion called the Global Wrestling Alliance. In '86, it was at the height of Hulkamania. They went on the penny stock market, and they raised some money to start a promotion that was supposed to take over, ironically enough, championship wrestling from Florida, because they had gone under. They had Gordon Soley, and they were going to promote Florida and the Caribbean islands. Guy who was in charge of that was a guy named indie wrestler named Dr. Red Roberts. He was a work and a shoot psychologist. A friend of mine, guy that worked for my dad, knew him and hooked us up and started coming around the school. Didn't start ring announcing, but just started coming. They had a school in Davie where I lived. Started coming around the school, got to know Larry Malenko, Dean and Joe's dad, great guy, and a guy named Bob Roop, who was the booker. Really, because of those two, and I don't know if they were just bored or, and wanted to blow some time a few nights a week, but they gave me the time of day, and one thing led to another, started to ring announce some house shows for them, started to promote some shows for them. They went out of business. Me and Bob Roop bought the ring, started doing indie shows. Bob Roop got a job as an agent for WCW in the early 90s. He was a friend of Ole Anderson's, and he hooked me up with Jody Hamilton, who ironically enough was said assassin, and started bringing up enhancement talents and doing stooge stuff when I was up there, and just worked my way into a spot.
See, I can already tell that this is going to be a great conversation, but from question one and the names that you just announced and dropped there, Dusty Rhodes, Ole Anderson, Jolie Hamilton, and it's so funny you mentioned, because you grew up watching Dusty and you got to work with all these guys in WCW. Is that kind of like a mind-blowing thing for you?
Dude, the whole thing's mind-blowing. I'm 54 years old. The whole, I look back at WCW, mind-blowing. It went by so quick, I probably didn't have enough time to enjoy it, but I look back with fond memories. It's funny how the mind works. I don't remember that as much of the bad stuff, and I tend to think about more of the good stuff, because there was some bad stuff there at the end for sure. But yeah, working with Dusty Rhodes, it's a funny story. They had me doing the European Nitro as a play-by-play, and Larry Zbyszko was my color commentator, and I used the name Dave Lawrence because basically it aired a week after the Nitro aired live on TNT, so I was basically pitching to myself in the ring, and and that was because of Dusty Rhodes, and the ironic story is that Dusty Rhodes looked at me and he said, and I'm the only person in the world in the business who can't do a Dusty Rhodes impression, so I apologize. I wish I can. So he looked at me and said, Penzer, he said, it's not like Tony Schiavone's going to be doing this in 25 years. And son of a bitch, funny how things happen, because 25 years later, he's back on TNT doing play-by-play.
It's all full circle.
I love that story, man. But because he thought there's no way, but he did what he didn't realize. I think at that time is nostalgia is way more important than age sometimes, which is why I think I got an opportunity at Impact, and why Tony and Jim Ross are with AEW. And Vince sort of, I think, understands that because he brings out Flair and different legends, but he never really embraced that when it comes to announcing and ring announcing and play-by-play. One of the tragedies, other than the fact that he passed, of the Howard Finkel story is that, for 10, 12, 15 years, he was able to do the job. And because he didn't look what Vince thought was the right part, that the greatest wrestling ring announcer of all time, not even close, no second place, missed all those years. So that's a tragedy, but unfortunately, that's the way life works, and I never understood it, but
yeah, it's one that's something I don't get either. Like you said, when you have a voice like Howard Finkel or Jim Ross, and these are the soundtracks of your company. They're just as important as the talent in the ring. You hear guys like Kevin Owens say he learned how to speak English from Jim Ross. It blows my mind as well.
I never heard that. That's cool. I never heard that. I don't understand it, but Vince is the boss, and he has a picture in his mind of what an announcer's supposed to look like and a play-by-play guy's supposed to look like. And who am I to tell him what he's supposed to do? He's been very successful. So
I guess he knows a thing or two, eh?
Yeah, just a little bit. Although he seems to be struggling with this pandemic thing, and we're all struggling a bit. But he seems to be struggling the most. I'm not sure how he's going to get it back together. But I enjoy watching AEW, and I certainly enjoy watching Impact Wrestling since I've gone back and really gotten to know the awesome locker room and the young talent that they have. I'm so excited for Slammiversary, which, as we tape this, is a few days away. Not sure when this is going to air, but I don't get WWE anymore. NXT is okay. WWE, nothing. It's nothing. I'm not trying to be shit on anybody. Excuse my language. I just I kind of fast forward to it, and I don't really see anything that. The last thing that I thought was really cool was the Heath Slater angle with Drew Galloway. That was awesome.
That was well done.
The Becky Lynch reveal. That was awesome too, when she was pregnant. That kind of stuff, man. He still knows how to make moments, but he just doesn't make enough of them.
Yeah.
And in all fairness, 3 hours is too long in the world's most perfect setting. In an empty arena with a bunch of students and plexiglass, it's impossible.
Yeah, it's definitely different. I promise, Dave, that by the end of this, I'm not going to book one of us to lose an eyeball before this podcast is over tonight.
I don't even give him crap about that, because everybody said, what is Bray Wyatt going to do with the House of Fun match, and what is Undertaker this last ride match? And out of all the matches on the show, I enjoyed those two the most. So,
yeah.
Look, everybody knows, look, we're smart everybody's smart at this point. The whole world's smartened up. There's no more kayfabe. So the whole world knows that nobody's losing an eye, that it's going to be a makeup type thing, or they're going to do, insert some post editing, and that's fine. How they, I don't know how you really explain it. I guess for the foreseeable future, whoever loses the eye has to wear an eye patch over one eye. I don't know how that is for Ray with a mask, but I'm assuming that this is just my assumption. I have no inside information. Just my assumption that Ray's going to lose and probably at least go away for a while. But that's just an assumption, just knowing the bigger picture. But I could be totally wrong.
No, that makes the most sense too. And before I get back, I had a couple questions. But you mentioned the cinematic matches. One thing I always find with WWE is they stumble upon these things and they push it down your throat. Do you think they're doing too many of them? I felt like they did that also with the women's revolution. They don't like to let things kind of happen naturally. Like they force it on you.
They're getting close, but I don't think they've done too much yet. But if they continue at the pace that they're at, you can't do those every other week or even once a pay-per-view, in my opinion. You got to save that for 3 or 4 times a year.
Keep it special, right?
No, I agree. But, that's basically the only thing that they got right now that seems to be working for them. So, look, we do live television, and we do not live television, but television in a studio with no fans. I think it comes off better than WWE, and I'm not just saying that because I work there. I honestly believe that. I can't point out why. Maybe it's just the expectations of WWE and these big arenas, and Impact was never really, as always, just the Impact Zone. And, for a while, I guess TNA went out and did some big arenas, but yeah, it's tough. It's never in my life did I. My job is supposed to be entertaining the fans. Never in my life did I think that my job would be just announcing the wrestlers. And I do more stuff for Impact behind the scenes and produce content and interview people and stuff. So that makes it cool. But I just can't wait to get back in front of a crowd. But who knows how long it's going to be.
Well, we're hoping sooner. I've had the privilege to see you live once. We're based out of Toronto, so when WCW came and did their Mayhem pay-per-view in Toronto, I was there. And you're right, it's all the little things that you do to keep the crowd engaged that people don't see. You announcers are the unsung heroes of the live show.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I always just tried to work hard. And look, I know my place. I wasn't the star of the show. I wasn't the star of the announce team. I was, if it wasn't for the fact that the Bobby Heenans of the world and the Tony Schiavones used to just like to rib me in the ring, they'd have probably hardly ever said my name. But I was just honored to be there, and I was there for the fans, and I knew my spot, and that's cool. And it just really enjoyed the back and forth. And, towards the end when we were doing Nitro and Thunder and the same tapings with 1,000 people there, I'm not going to lie, that was tough. But life ain't easy.
Well, now you just mentioned the name Bobby Heenan, and I can't not ask, what was it like being around Bobby Heenan? He seems like he's one of the funniest guys in the business. His work is fantastic. Did you get a chance to get to know Bobby on a personal level at all?
Yeah, really well. Actually, really well. I can't even explain what an honor it was to get to know Bobby. And, it's funny, when I was in college and I used to have a friend, and we would watch All-American primetime wrestling, and we watched the talk show that Vince had, that Bobby was on a lot. And he was like there with the Rossetti sisters. I don't know if I'm predating you guys, but yeah, I used to sit in my college dorm with a friend of mine, and we'd get stoned. And I haven't smoked in 30 years, but we got stoned back in the day. And we used to just laugh at Bobby Heenan's shenanigans. And we used to sit there and talk and say, could you imagine having a drink? Like, if I could have a drink with anybody in the world, just one drink in a conversation, it'd be Bobby Heenan. And I was so honored to be able to have plenty of drinks and lots of conversation. And to get to know him and call him a friend, and he called me a friend, and one of the biggest honors of all this that I've done.
That's unbelievable. Bobby Heenan, again, a legend in the business. If I could be a fly on the wall to even listen to Bobby tell a story for a couple of hours.
Well, listen to this. We used to have towards the end of WCW, I'd say back starting probably in '98, we had an announcer's trailer, because there were so many different people coming in, women and celebrities, and we had WCW like a live pre-show on the internet, and so they got us a trailer, and it was me. I was looking at Tony Schiavone, Mike Tenay, Lee Marshall, Gene Okerlund, Larry Zbyszko, Bobby Heenan.
Oh, man.
Just to be able to sit there for a couple hours and listen to them tell stories and rib each other and go back and forth. I mean, that alone, man, if you tell me that's all you got to do in this business, that alone is like incredible. That's like living dreams. So
and to get a paycheck on top of that, to listen to Bobby and Mean Gene, I'm sure those guys are just a hoot together.
Yeah, and they are, and I really miss them, and it's sad, but especially Bobby, a guy who's one of the most hilarious orators, if not the most hilarious orators I've ever met. The last part of his life, he couldn't really communicate, and it's just that stuff like that really sucks. But he dealt with it like a trooper, and he would, whenever I'd see him, give me a big hug, and we had this couple of slogans that like were inside stuff for just me and him, and he would take a piece of paper. I would know exactly what he was going to write. I'm not going to say it because I'd rather let that be between us.
Absolutely.
But he'd write it. He'd write it out, and I'd laugh. I'd know what he was writing, but he wanted to find a way to communicate and to be normal, to be Bobby again, and I really miss both of those guys. Both of those guys were great friends and great mentors, and two of the best in the history of this business.
So, you're talking about your friendship with Bobby Heenan. Who are some of the guys that you traveled down the road with? Because, back when you guys were running WCW, you hear the stories that, you're packing guys into a car to save a penny. Who was in the car with you, Dave?
Well, see, I got my car paid for, and my hotel room paid for, and my gas paid for.
So you were the popular one, right?
Well, when I first started on the road, a referee called Pee Wee Anderson kind of befriended me. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I'm sure that he was doing it to save money and, on a car and gas. But he was getting something out of it, and I was getting something out of it because he took me under the wing. He showed me the road. He showed me the ropes of the business and the things to do and the things not to do, or in the dressing room and around the boys. And that was valuable information. So, we sort of were using each other, and it worked out fine. And I kept riding with him, and then Bobby Eaton jumped in, every once in for a while, and then Arn Anderson jumped in, and that was a total blast. And loved Bobby too. And then Pee Wee left, unfortunately, and so I started driving with Arn and Rick for about a year, and then I had like two groups of three groups. I would drive with Benoit, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, and Jericho, and usually like Chavo Jr. or somebody like that. Mark Curtis was part of that group when Mark was around. Miss him a lot. Great referee. Miss all those guys. But then I had that group, and then I had the Arn and Rick, and eventually Charles Robinson would ride with us. Then at the very end, when all those guys went away and Arn wasn't on the road as much anymore, I started driving at the very end with Hugh Morris and Prince Iakea. Those two were a blast too. So those were my four little crews: Arn, Pee Wee, and then Pee Wee and Bobby, and then Pee Wee, Bobby, Arn, then Arn and Rick, and then just Arn and Charles, Benoit, Malenko, the Guerreros, and Jericho with Mark Curtis, and then Prince Iakea, Mike Hayner, and Hugh Morris.
So you mentioned a couple names there. I gotta ask, Dave. I was listening in preparation for this to your appearance on Talk is Jericho. Highly entertaining. Highly recommend checking it out. You told a story on there with Arn and Eddie, and you and Chris in the room beside you guys about an argument over an apple pie. Is there any way you can give me a short version of that story for our listeners here? Because I was popping huge listening to that.
I really can't do the story justice, but I'll attempt to. I'm not a great storyteller. I'm more of a one-line guy. But yeah, we all went out and we drank, and that's what we did after the matches pretty much. And you'd go to a bar and drink. Your adrenaline, most people go to bed and they've come home from work, their 9-to-5 job, and they've had dinner, maybe a glass of wine or a cigar or whatever, and by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, their body's ready to go to sleep. Well, our adrenaline's all pumping till 10:30 at night, and then we're trying to find an avenue to kind of have some fun, so to wind down. So we went out. It was with me and Benoit and Jericho and Arn, and that was the one times that the Arn and the Jericho group combined, which was a blast. And Eddie, and I healed a room with Benoit and Jericho, and Eddie and Arn healed a room, and they went to, I think Arn was getting I want to say McDonald's. I think me and Jericho disagree on the fast food entrepreneurship. But we went back to the hotel room. Our rooms were next to each other, and the walls were like, you could hear right from one room to another. So we could really hear the whole thing. And he told Eddie, he said, this I will get you food now. I'll even buy you food. But what I will not do is, if you don't order food, you will not get my food once you smell it and get hungry, because I'm ordering my food. And both of those guys were interesting when they had a few drinks, and they both had, temper, so to speak. And so, Eddie said, I don't want anything. And Arn kept telling him, Eddie, I'm not giving you any food. If you want food, I'll buy you food, but I'm not giving you any of my food. All right, Arn, I'm going to bed. Well, the food comes. It wasn't Uber Eats because we didn't have that. I don't even remember how it came. Maybe they delivered. Maybe Arn went out and got it. All of a sudden Eddie gets hungry because he's smelling the food and he wants food. And so him and Arn start going back and forth and yelling and screaming at each other. And, it started out sort of as a joke. And then as things do sometimes in the heat of battle when there's alcohol involved, tempers started to flare. I think Eddie's more than Arn. And they started yelling at each other, and then it peaked over an apple pie that Eddie wanted half of the apple pie, and Arn's like, I can't do Arn Anderson. He's one of the greatest promo guys. When I say promo, cut a promo on somebody in a bar, cut a promo on somebody in the ring, cut a promo on somebody in a hotel room, on an airplane. Just ask Disco Inferno if you ever speak to him. He's been on the other end of a few. But he's one of the few guys in the business that could absolutely tear you a new asshole in front of an entire locker room, and you'd laugh along with it because it's just so funny. And so I can't do it justice, but all of a sudden they're yelling, screaming, knock on the door. And it's the hotel manager. And he said, we've gotten complaints about you guys screaming. If I have to come back here one more time, you guys are going to get thrown out and I'm going to call the police. So Arn was like, Arn and Eddie were like, yes, sir. We're really sorry. So the door closes, and we were right near the elevator, so you could hear the manager get in the elevator closes, you could hear the ding, and all of a sudden Eddie goes, God damn, Arn, if you just give him a piece of apple pie, boom, they start going again. It's just one of those things, man. You got to be there. I don't do the story any justice, and it's just, God, I look back, and it's one of the things me and Jericho still really laugh about if you listen to that episode, because it was just something that we got to share that was something organic, you can't, it just happened. And, you could try to relive that, 10 nights in a row, and you're never going to be able to relive it because it happened, and it was, real, and it happened to be hilarious.
Oh, that's a great story. That's definitely a great story. And since we're on the topic of Chris Jericho, one of your bigger moments in WCW involved Chris Jericho, ripping up your jacket and stuff. How fun is that for you to get involved in some of the angles, especially with one of your best friends like Jericho?
It was cool. I had a little say in it, but it was mostly Jericho. I like to say it was 85% Jericho, 10% Terry Taylor, and 5% me. But yeah, it was a cool idea. Jericho wanted to turn heel. They didn't really care what he did, quite frankly, on the smaller shows. So he came up with the angle. Back in the day, you didn't even have to run it past anybody but Terry, who was the WCW Saturday Night producer. So there was no Bischoff and Hogan and those types of people at the Saturday Night show. So so we did it, and we did it a few weeks, and they actually took notice and showed the B-roll on Thunder, and then have them do it on Thunder, and they turned heel, and it went from there. The only part that pisses me off, and I think I might have talked about this on his podcast, if not, when he was on my podcast, we definitely talked about it, back in the day they were doing these action figures, and every WCW action figure came with something special. So, I don't know if for some reason the Giant action figure came with a little Rey Mysterio action figure.
Okay.
Raven action figure came with a chair, a little plastic chair, stuff like that. And they were going to do a Chris Jericho action figure with a David Penzer action figure with a tux that you could tear, a tux jacket you could tear off.
Nice.
Well, he left and went to WWE. Good for him, but he screwed up my chance of ever getting in my own action figure.
Oh no.
It's all good. He made the right decision, but if he just could have hung around a little bit longer, I could have had my own action figure to show my grandkids.
Maybe he can get you one made up for a birthday or a Christmas gift.
I actually got one made up. Somebody was doing custom action figures for like $15, and I'm like, it's just something to put on my desk, and it's all right. It looks okay, but it still would have been cooler to have the official WCW action figure.
So we're on the topic WCW. What are your early memories thinking about the NWO when they're first forming up? You guys are getting the momentum rolling. It was pretty crazy, you know. The fans are throwing garbage in the ring. You're right in the trenches there. Like you ever getting smoked with any of the garbage? What are your memories of that time period with the NWO getting rolling and you guys taking over the ratings?
I was lucky enough to avoid most of the garbage because I wasn't in the ring. They put my seat against the railing, so all the people in the front row would stand up. So if it hit any of them, and I'd be sitting down, so they'd be my cover. It was funny. About a week ago, it was the I think 23rd or 24th anniversary of Hogan turning heel, and I was telling somebody about it, and I said, and for 2 years after that, I dodged garbage, which basically is true. But even before that, I'll never forget. It was in Macon, Georgia, and Scott Hall walked down the steps in the middle of a match and took my microphone, and we knew he was coming. We knew Kevin Nash was coming. It wasn't a secret, but we didn't know what they were going to do with it. And he did, if you remember correctly, this legendary interview about basically pretending that he was invading WCW, talking about the whole Scheme Gene thing, and you know, and his last words were, "You wanted a war, you got a war." And man, a light bulb went off in my head. I got goosebumps, and I said, "This is fucking fantastic."
Yeah.
If they even fuck this up, it'll be great. And if they get it right, it could be fucking life-changing. And they actually got it right for a while.
Yeah, no, that changed the whole industry. You know, rate that spiked everything, and then, you know, on the other side they had Austin getting hot. It was a great time, you know, from my perspective, being a fan. I could only imagine what it was like back there with the big crowds. You know, the party scene after was probably pretty fun. You guys are rolling. What an incredible time, and you know, it's hard to think of if anything like that could happen again. Do you see any stars kind of you know, on the horizon right now in any of the promotions that you think could maybe kickstart another boom like that?
I like Sammy Guevara. I know he went away for a while, and hopefully he'll come back. Big fan of his. Big fan of Ace Austin in Impact Wrestling.
Yeah.
By the time this airs, he may actually be the youngest Impact World Heavyweight Champion in the history of the company. But really, really impressed with him. And I'm not just saying that because I work with Impact. I really never heard of him until I went up and did those tapings in Nashville, and he blew me away. Really think Jordan Grace is awesome. I like. There's a team that they have now: Tasha Steeles and Kira Hogan, which really entertained me. You know, a lot of guys on the Indies that are really up and coming that really haven't gotten a chance to do anything lately because of this. You know, the world shutting down. But yeah, you know, there's that Austin Theory guy got benched for whatever reason. He had a lot of potential around him. I know a lot of the players in Evolve who were, you know, just raving about him and how much natural talent he had, almost like a Randy Orton, just natural talent and charisma. So there's a lot of young guys and girls out there. I think Nyla Rose is an inspiration, and think she's could be a monster heel woman, world champion type talent, especially with some of the smaller women that they have there. So there's a ton of people out there. Darby Allin was doing well, and Brian Cage is a monster, and you know, there's the wrestling world, the wrestling business is in a good place talent wise, I believe. We'll have to see what happens when the world gets back to normal, and how long it's going to be till the world gets back to normal, because that's certainly a deficit in a lot of ways. And you know, I think this cancel culture, and I get some of it, and this political correctness, I worry that it's going to eliminate a lot of the things we love about wrestling. You know, I understand that things have to evolve, and that things that were done in the 70s and 80s are unacceptable now as far as angles. I'm not talking about what people did. I'm talking about angles. You know, there were some angles probably in the 70s and 80s that today would be frowned upon. Yeah. And I understand that, and that's cool. But when you cancel everything, the wrestling business is meant to be a little bit provocative. And you have to have heels and baby faces, and you have to have people you like and you hate, whether you like the heels or like the baby faces. So I worry a little bit. about the future of the business in this ultra political correct world. But we'll see. Everything has a cycle on it, and I'm hoping that it'll come back and cooler heads will prevail. But right now, things are pretty crazy, and I just try to stay out of the way.
So, and you're talking about some angles from the past and stuff. Now, you've had a front row seat for some of the biggest moments in wrestling history. What sticks out for you from your time, whether it's WCW, Impact Wrestling? What are some of your holy shit moments from sitting ringside? You were there when Goldberg won the world title. One of my personal favorites is the reunion of the Four Horsemen. Anything jump out for you, Dave?
You just named them all. Scott Hall walking down the stairs in Macon, grabbing my mic. The reunion of the Four Horsemen, which Arn practiced that promo on me for probably 3 weeks. I probably heard that exact promo probably 50 times, and it gave me just as much goosebumps when I heard it live in Greenville. Goldberg winning the world title was awesome. It was amazing. Electrical. Diamond Dallas Page when he teased joining the NWO, and then Diamond cut Scott Hall and Kevin Nash in the Superdome in New Orleans. As far as Impact Wrestling goes, Jay Lethal coming face to face with Ric Flair.
Oh, that was awesome too, yeah.
Always a highlight. That's like a monthly viewing occurrence for me. If I've had a few drinks on a Saturday night, I go to YouTube and I have that marked and I watch it because that's a must-see viewing. Don West turning on Mike Tenay, turning heel just because I was so close with those guys at that time. So anything that's real Kevin Nash, not Kevin Nash the character, but Kevin Nash the person, is hilarious. Just a lot of stuff. Mostly promo segment. Matches stand out. Anything Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio was changed this business like few people have. I remember, and I tell this story often, I remember we had heard Rey Mysterio Jr. was coming to WCW, and everybody knew he was small, but I don't think anybody realized how small he was. And the murmur going around the dressing room that night, that afternoon, was like, "Have you seen how small he is? I mean, he's really small. Like Dean Malenko and Benoit. Those guys are small, but this guy's like half their size." Let me tell you something. He went out there and did his stuff. Nobody ever said another word. From that moment on, nobody ever said another word. That man spoke for himself. His moves were incredible, and he changed the industry. Guys like TJP and Ace Austin and so many people like that have based their careers on being Rey Mysterio fans. Sammy Guevara, and so anything Rey Mysterio is always a pleasure. He's the nicest guy in the world.
No, absolutely. He did change the game. You nailed that one for sure. I kind of want to wrap up on WCW a little bit there. I want to talk about Impact. How did you end up signing with Impact Wrestling? And what are your early memories of working there? I know you did a big angle with Kurt Angle. I'm wondering if you recovered from that forearm yet. That looked a little snug.
The forearm was snug. The clothesline I didn't feel, maybe because I was knocked out from the forearm, but he was pretty light on the clothesline. The ankle lock I didn't feel, and then the hitting me over the head with my shoes, with my dress shoes, definitely left a mark. It was okay. I mean, he felt bad about it, and we still joke about it to this day when I see him, if I see him. He's a snug guy, man. You look at him, and when he goes for a pin, he doesn't just crawl over you. He puts his elbow in your chin, the other guy's chin. So I mean, he's just a snug guy, and things happen. And hey, I got a $500 bonus for it. So
there you go.
So that didn't suck. As far as TNA starting, they had I was always friends with Jeff Jarrett. As we know, Jeremy Borash was the original ring announcer for them. Yeah. And he had a lateral move that he could go and do backstage interviews. So I lived in Tampa. They taped in Orlando. Jeff called me, said, "I got a spot. It might last a week. It might last 2 weeks, maybe a month. At some point, JB will probably go back into the ring announcer spot." It ended up lasting 5 years. Okay. It was part-time. I had my own business that did pretty well back then. And And so just got to go there part-time. And like I said, I'd sit in the conference room after the production meetings and lunch and sit there with Mike Tenay and Don West, and Kevin Nash would come in and tell stories, and Jim Cornette would come in and tell stories, and Bubba Ray would come in and tell stories, and Jeff would come in and tell stories, and they were actually paying me for that. So, and they were paying me pretty good for that, actually. So that lasted 5 years. When Bischoff and Hervey came in, Bischoff was not a big fan of JB doing the interviews, so they changed the way they did them. And so I true to Jeff's word, if JB was moving back and I was going home, and that's fine. That was the stipulations that were laid out for me. I did go back at the beginning of the change to Impact Wrestling. Scott D'Amore and Jeff Jarrett brought me back. They underwent some major cuts. I don't know if you remember when the Hebners were gone, and I mean, literally it was all new, more indie type talent, and so I just, they didn't have the budget for me, and so I went away. And I've known Scott D'Amore for 30 years. We keep in touch, and just recently he brought me up to Atlanta. It was really the last thing that I think anybody's ever done in front of fans, because I think like 2 days later the world shut down. But I did the play-by-play for the TNA reunion special that was to promote There's No Place Like Home, the pay-per-view that was going to happen WrestleMania weekend, the reunion. And I was supposed to call the play-by-play of the pay-per-view. And that never ended up not happening. And I think Scott, got his interest peaked when I was there. And we kept in touch, and he was promoting studio wrestling with no audience in Nashville because they were trying to keep their TV going. And he just reached out to me and said, how'd you like to come up and be a part of the team and see how it goes? And I'm honored. I was humbled and thrilled to be there. And I love this business. So as long as they'll have me, I'll stick around and work my ass off for them.
Well, in a company like Impact, it's great to have you too, because your voice lends credibility to their product as well. When we hear your voice, we think of those big moments with the NWO and WCW and the Jericho angle. So having you on board on Impact, in my opinion, it makes them a more credible company as well.
I don't mean to sound like cocky, because I'm saying this out of total humility, but I guess I never realized until I got on Twitter and Facebook and PMs and DMs and got to know certain people. I guess I never realized I just thought I was going out there doing my job. I didn't know, it come to find out 20 years later that, people at home were like imitating me, doing the intros and people, some of the younger talent comes up to me and how cool it is, you were the voice of my youth and now you're introducing me. I just didn't see that back then. I was just living my dream, having a blast, making a little money, traveling with my heroes. It comes full circle and it's really humbling, but I didn't realize, I guess, how much of a effect, you say that about how it brings credibility. I never saw it that way. I thought they might bring me in because, I'm better to deal with an audience than maybe some of these young guys who are off the indie circuit, but there isn't even any audience and they still got me coming in. So God bless them, man. I guess I left a little mark. I just didn't realize it until recently, and it's humbling as hell.
Well, and you mentioned impersonation, so I got to ask you, Luke Gallows is always claiming that he does a Penzer, and I've heard his Penzer. Now, to me, I got a little bit of heat with it, because to me, I think he's doing a Michael Capetta, and he's not giving you
he's actually, he's doing Gary Capetta.
Yeah.
He didn't realize that for the longest time, and then when he got smartened up, my old buddy Scott D'Amore smartened him up, and he was like, I'll still call it Penzer because so he gets the PR, and I appreciate that. Gallows and Anderson have a great little project coming out called Talkin' Shop-A-Mania. It's on Fight TV at the beginning of August, and I can't tell you how I know, but I will tell you that I do know that it is hilarious. If you like parody wrestling, if you like the Southpaw stuff that they did in WWE, you're going to absolutely love this stuff. A lot of great cameos, maybe even me. I don't know. I'm not sure yet. And so that was a blast. But I want to hype their pay-per-view on Fight TV, Talkin' Shop-A-Mania. If you like that type of thing, or if you have a good sense of humor, be sure to check it out. I think it's only $15, and well worth the entertainment value that you're going to get.
Yeah, that's definitely one that I've got marked on my calendar for sure.
Yeah,
those guys
I'm telling you, man. Be sure to check that out. If you're a fan of that kind of stuff, it's some of the craziest stuff I've ever heard, but entertaining as hell. Not that I heard it live, just I heard stories.
Stories, absolutely. And you're mentioning crazy and entertaining. So when we air this interview on our show, we do a weekly countdown show, Dave. And the week that we are going to have you on, we're going to be talking about the top 7 Terry Funk matches from the year 1997 until about the end of WCW run there, about 2000. Do you have any Terry Funk stories at all you can share, kind of tie in with the theme of the show?
You know, we talk about guys I got to be friends with. I almost feel like I'm bragging. But yeah, I got to be friends with Terry Funk and his brother Dory, and got to work for Roddy Piper. And I mean, it's just amazing when you look back. Dusty Rhodes, as we said. But yeah, Terry was a blast. Terry, there was a shot we did in Jacksonville back before WCW really took over at the Jacksonville Coliseum, and when you went through the curtain of where the fans saw you, there was like a general area where, you know, regular people, not you know, you had to have a backstage pass, but like workers and security guards and family and friends, they could hang out there, and then you had to walk a little bit down into the back to get into the locker rooms. So Terry Funk had taken Vader's place against Sting in the main event, and he got disqualified, and he got mad at me, and you know, we were doing our deal where he chased me to the back. And the funny thing is, I had never worked with Terry before. That was the first time, and I had met him a few times. But as soon as we got through that first curtain, I turned around and said, "Thank you, Terry. I appreciate it." He goes, and he keeps coming after me. "You son of a bitch! I'm gonna kick your ass. You better run." And so now I'm thinking, holy shit, he's really pissed. And I ran to the locker room, and he goes, and he smiled at me when we got to the locker room, and he said, "You don't stop until we get into the dressing room. That's a lesson that you just learned." And boy, I remember that lesson. And another cool story about Terry Funk is I got to work with him and Piper at the Gathering of the Juggalos. I did one of those events. It ended at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and you stayed about 40 minutes away from where the Gathering of the Juggalos were. So me and Terry and Roddy Piper, who were in the main event, got to ride back to the hotel in a van at about 4 in the morning, and I had a small little bottle of vodka. Roddy didn't drink at the time, but me and Terry started taking swigs out of the vodka and just telling stories, and I ended up missing my plane that morning, and it's the only time I ever missed my plane. But my wife understood, because what a cool moment that was. And I'd say my favorite Terry Funk match is probably, other than some of the stuff in the 70s with Dusty Rhodes and in Championship Wrestling from Florida, is probably the I Quit match with Flair.
Oh, yeah.
One of the greatest matches in the history of professional wrestling, and they don't make them like Terry Funk anymore, man. You asked me about some up-and-coming talent, and there are, but people like Terry Funk, there's just Dusty Rhodes, even Roddy Piper, they just don't make them like that anymore. It's a different world, and I'm just honored I was able to work with them.
No, that's cool. And you mentioned the Gathering of Juggalos. Just real quick, what's this crazier seeing, the Gathering of Juggalos or the Road Wild pay-per-views back in the day?
Well, the problem, I hate to say this, The one that I was at, the Legends show at the Gathering of the Juggalos that I was at, only had like 300 people in the crowd because I guess there was a big concert going on at the same time, one like the headliner. So I would say Road Wild just because it got pretty busy. I didn't really love either of the surroundings, if I'm being honest. But yeah, they were both interesting. Never did I think I'd be hanging out in Sturgis, South Carolina during, the bike week and to be able to have that opportunity. And never did I think I'd be in the middle of the Gathering of the Juggalos. So both cool opportunities to see something different and new. But I'd have to say, I guess Road Wild wins by default because the event that I did, the Legends event, like I said, only had a few 500 people. Now, I know that the event the next night where they do all the blood and the guts and the stuff, I know that one had a lot more people. But so I wasn't there for that. So I'd already gotten my hungover ass on a plane and later than I was supposed to, and got home, hung my head down, and let my wife berate me for about a minute and a half.
Well, you definitely had an amazing career. Before I let you go, is there anything you want to plug? Your Twitter, your podcast? Let the people know where they can get a hold of you.
You can follow me at David Penzer, all one word, DavidPenzer. You can check out the podcast on all platforms. It's called Sitting Ringside. It drops every Monday. What I basically try to do is, back in the day when we went from town to town to town, like you said, who did you ride with? I told you who I rode with, but what I didn't tell you is what we'd kill the time because there was no cell phones, there was no internet. So we'd kill the time by telling stories about our careers, about how we got into business, and just laughing and talking about ribs and stuff. And so that's what I try to do on my podcast. I try to make it like myself and the guests is driving from, Charlotte to Greenville and telling stories along the way. And that's the goal. And we're on our third year now, and knock on wood, enjoy doing it, and people seem to enjoy it. So you could check that out on any platform. If you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe, and you can check me out for as long as they'll have me at Impact Wrestling on Access TV every Tuesday at 8:00 Eastern Time.
That's awesome, man, and I appreciate you taking the time with us. I will post the links for your podcast so our listeners can hear that. It is an amazing listen to, Sitting Ringside with Dave Penzer. Dave, I really appreciate you taking the time out and chatting with us, man. Thank you so much.
No, great time reliving old memories, always, anytime.
All right, and on behalf of Dave Penzer, I am Tyler, and we have been counted out. Cheers.